Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Life and Love Post-COVID. We are on our final day. I can't believe it's been 5 days already. It's so crazy. And I am absolutely thrilled and honored to welcome Sophia LePage. She is a powerhouse in all the ways and such a beautiful friend of mine. We met a while ago, and our journeys as solopreneurs and then business owners and friends has been a really epic one together. It's like we've gotten these beautiful checkpoints along the way. And so when I was like, who do I want to be at this summit? Like instantly I was like, Sophia needs to be here. She has such incredible magic to share with people. And I want her. And so reached out and she was like, yes, I'm in. So Sophia, thank you so much for being here. It means a lot.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to get to have this chat with you and share with everyone inside of the group. I'm sure it's going to be really magical.
Always. So why don't we start out with introducing you? Can you tell everyone who's tuning in a little bit about who you are, about your journey? What's it been like?
Sure. So my journey has been twisty, turny, wild, crazy, unexpected. I feel that really I came out of the womb hustling, really. My earliest memories, even in kindergarten, were hustling memories. So I had this sort of innate feeling of like, I need to be perfect. I need to check the boxes. My best needs to be better than everyone else's best. So there was a lot of finding my identity in comparison, like comparing myself to others, competing with others, trying to be who I thought other people wanted me to be so that I could be loved, so that I could be recognized, so that I could be seen, so that I could reach my potential.
Mm-hmm.
And that, right, I'm sure we can all.
Oh, I feel you.
And that had me at 30 completely burnt out, super disconnected from my pleasure, from my true self, from my desires. I was married. It's kind of like I started to wake up and be like, who on earth am I? Like, whose life is this? Did I sign up for this? Because this doesn't feel like me. And because so much of my identity was wrapped up in this good girl image that I had, I feel on some subconscious, unconscious level, I felt like I need to burn down this image. Like the only way for me to break free, the only way for me to start again is to completely wipe the slate clean. And I'm not going to do that in a conscious and evolved way. So what I did was I had like a string of affairs. I imploded my marriage. It wasn't a conscious decision. This was all happening to me. So I was very much like life. I was like, oh, here I am doing this thing. And oh, here I am doing that thing. I was like a leaf blowing in the wind. And one day waking up and like, my marriage is over. My friendships are over. My reputation is done. And there's like this trail of destruction in my life. A lot of people got hurt. A lot of people, very destabilized by what happened. And when I kind of had come out of this place of like, oh, I burnt it all to the ground, then I was like, wow, what are the consequences of this? And why did I choose this incredibly painful, difficult, hurtful, destructive way of doing things? So that was what kind of started my my spiritual journey, started my journey of self-love, started my journey into sexuality, into feminine embodiment, into tantra, to kind of get into connection with like who I truly was, what I truly desired, and my voice, like to share more about myself, to build more authentic connections, to build true intimacy, to create community and friends and partnerships that really spoke to my soul, where it was a soul level connection. And so that's been, you know, like the biggest driver in my life since then, is like living my potential, but not in the way of striving to be who I think society or my parents or my partner or my friends want me to be, but like living the fullness of my true authentic self in the world.
Wow. That's no little mission.
No.
What a huge shift. What a huge shift. So as you've been on this journey, you've been figuring out now in this next chapter, who are you? What brings you the most joy? What makes you alive? Like just true authentic self that you're speaking of. What have you discovered that you're really passionate about?
Yeah, what I've discovered is I'm so passionate about pleasure. Oh my God. I'm like, what I have realized is, as I started, and feminine embodiment, so I'm a feminine embodiment and leadership coach, and what I support women with now is helping them get over that kind of good girl image, get past that burnout, the hustle, and come into connection with their deeper desires, come back into connection with their bodies, come back into connection with pleasure, and let that guide them to the aligned actions on their path, and bring more of that feminine authentic essence into their businesses, so they feel nourished inside of their businesses. So, you know, success is more sustainable. We're not being, you know, the tortoise and the hare, like where the hare is running, runs out of steam halfway through, and the tortoise is kind of like going along smelling the roses and ends up finishing first. So that's kind of like the energy, and that's what I've done for myself in my life too, is like that slowing down, bringing the energy out of my mind back into my body, and asking myself, like, what's exciting? What turns me on? What do I desire to do? And letting myself just rip up that rule book, you know, just be like, okay, let's do it. And every time I've done that, it's always worked out for me.
I love it. I love it. I've had a similar experience, and I'm just thinking about, you know, the whole theme of this summit is life and love post-COVID. And I have noticed that there's this curiosity of what would it be like to create more fun, to create more freedom, to create more pleasure, and have more in life. And a lot of people are, but there's also at the same time, there's this weird pull of like, but the last couple of years have been really hard and really weird. And it hasn't been all about that for most people. It's been more about the constriction. So there's like an extra hurdle to jump over in many ways for folks. So I'm curious for you, like how, if people are wanting to begin exploring this, what you just said, it sounds really cool, Sophia, to be able to just say, yeah, let's have more pleasure. But how do you really start to like do that? How do you bring it into your life?
Yeah, so I feel like the first piece is working through the guilt, because a lot of times we have this sort of guilt, like society is like, you shouldn't want that. That's shallow, or like pleasure is bad, or pleasure is a reward after a job well done, or if you shouldn't want that because other people are struggling. So, you know, so I think that there's a lot in there around moving past the guilt and recognizing that you really owning what pleasure, like true authentic embodied pleasure is it's like that indication from your soul. It's kind of like your soul whispering to you about what's in alignment for you, what's the best path for your soul to move forward and achieve what your soul is here to achieve. And just like, you know, when you're at school and when you are good at something, it's fun, right? If you're really good at a sport, you're like, I love this sport, I want to do this sport, and you want to train and you want to get good at it and you want to do all these things because it's naturally something that you're aligned with. So pleasure works the same in all areas. And so I feel like what we need to do is kind of like not stop demonizing pleasure and recognize that, like, you stepping into that is also offering permission to others to do the same. So one way that you can start to be like, well, what the fuck brings me pleasure apart from a glass of wine and you know, like, all this kind of stuff, is to really like get quiet, get curious. Like I love to just do some deep breathing, place a hand on your heart, a hand on your womb, or if you're a man, on your hara, and just ask yourself, like, what's that deep underneath the all this busyness, all the mind, all the shoulds, all the coulds, all the need tos? What's the thing that you feel like a deep ache for? Like that's often what it feels like. It feels like a deep, deep, deep ache. It's like a longing. And it's that thing that you're like, but am I even allowed to have that? Is that even possible? If you can even start to question your thoughts about, oh, well, that's not even possible. If you can stop discounting that longing and telling yourself, oh, it's not achievable for me, or I'm here, so I'll never get there. And actually just start getting curious about that and just listening to that. And then asking the universe, God, source, whatever you want to call it, for support in like, how can I make this my reality? What's something I can do right now? And that might be just in that moment, just letting it be possible instead of impossible. That might be the beginning of shifting it from something that's a longing into something that becomes your life.
I love that. I love that. It's so much of, I think, of the hurdles that we have every day are up here. It's in the stories we tell ourselves, the values and beliefs we've created over time that probably weren't even ours to begin with, right? We learned them as part of our survival mode. And so I think it's absolutely beautiful to have this, like, okay, well, what else is there? And what am I aching for? What am I yearning for? And with that, how can I just begin to shift the story on what I'm thinking? It's so good. So good. And the fact that you even said, like, that is a step to begin to shift from it's not possible to maybe it is possible. It is a huge step that I think people often discount. It's like, no, I need to take some sort of action that everybody can see to make this get going. I'm like, no, it all starts inside. So juicy.
Yeah. Yeah, it's an internal game first. And then the external action comes later, but like the action doesn't usually get presented to us until we've started that internal process, because otherwise, if you're like, oh, okay, well, I'm just going to take this action now, then it's usually coming again from the mind. And it's like that, it's that classic hustle energy, right? Where it's like, you're doing things, right? Yeah. You look like you're doing stuff. You feel busy, but are you moving forward, or are you spinning in a circle? And when we're so much caught up in like, I have to take action, I've got to take action all the time, go, 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 go. Sometimes we don't have that. We're missing that moment of stepping back and the perspective of like, wait a second, are these actions that I'm taking actually moving the needle forward, or are they just keeping me from feeling the guilt of not doing?
Yeah. Yeah. And we as humans don't like to feel uncomfortable feelings. It's amazing to me the lengths we'll go to avoid our feelings. We are quite creative when it comes to that.
Yeah, definitely.
The word resistance is coming up for me right now. What do I do if I've got some resistance to this, to these emotions that are coming up with the longing, or it's the longing itself, or it's the idea of changing the story? Like, do you have any thoughts on what we do when we face some like?
Yeah, I actually feel like resistance is a good thing. I think that we see resistance as like, oh, that means that I'm not supposed to do that, right? Or that's not meant for me. Or if it was meant to be, it would be quote unquote easy all the way along. But actually, I feel like that resistance it's kind of like the first challenge on the path towards creating something. It's a signpost, an indicator that you've moved into a new space. Inside the comfort zone, there is no resistance, right? We're just swimming around, chilling on this bench. It's easy, it's da 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 da, but it's also quite boring. And so as we start to move into a new place, it's unknown. So of course it's going to feel scary because your brain's trying to kind of figure out what's happening, right? It's like, we need to make sure that you're safe. So I need to give you all the scenarios of what's going to kill you in this moment. So, and then if it's something really different, your brain's like, wow, what are the scenarios? I've never been here before. I don't know, stop. And that's what resistance is. So if you can reframe resistance from like, oh, this is a sign of don't go any further, or this is something I can't get over, or this is just this is just the stop in the road, and it's because I don't have power, whatever it is, and reframe that into, oh, this is me being scared because I'm going somewhere new, and scared and excited are actually the same frequency. So what about if I just took this and I turned it into, ooh, what else is possible, and that starts to melt some of that resistance away. And some actual practices you can do is breathing, screaming, dancing, moving, resistance shows up in the body. So this is why I love feminine embodiment so much, or any embodiment, because it's like we're releasing, actively physically releasing the resistance from the body, the energy of resistance. For me, something I love to do is sing mantras, because just whatever, or sing anything that makes me feel uplifted. And then at the end of that song, I'm like, what was I even worried about? This is everything's possible. So it can really change in seconds, in minutes. We can move through that.
Yes, beautiful. I love how you said all that. And I don't remember who made the quote, but like, fear is excitement without the breath. And you're like, here we go. We're just going to breathe. We're going to move. We're going to be with it. It's going to be okay. It's getting ready to take that leap, and then taking that leap can be such big challenges. And yet here we are. So yeah, I love it. I love it. Yeah, I'm just curious what else is coming up for you around, just imagining the people who are tuning into this, really, and just be in this place of, okay, I'm ready for the fun. It's been so serious. But then also I find that fun for most people, it was kind of trained out of us a while ago. Pleasure was kind of like trained out of us a while ago. So how do you really let yourself have that fun, or begin to get ideas about, like, if you don't even know where to start, like, what is pleasure? What is fun? How do we get to start having this thing that sounds really cool?
Yeah, I feel like sometimes it's really good to go back to what you liked as a child, like when you're super early on, because there were things that you loved. Like I loved painting, I loved drawing, I loved dancing, I loved creating. And these are all the things. I mean, I don't really paint and draw anymore, but I have moved it into other forms of creativity. So I was always about creating content, right? Like there was no social media when I was 5 years old, but now I get to take that art and bring it onto social media, right? And I've transformed it. So I'm using my art, creating in a way that now is relevant to the work that I do, to the mission that I have, to the type of world that we live in today. So if you start to get curious about what you loved and why, because it may not be exactly the same quote unquote task that you did, but there was something that you loved about it, something about how you felt when you were doing that thing. And then getting curious about in your adult life, what might that look like? What are you drawn to? What's something that you've been like, oh, I wonder what it'd be like if I tried that thing. Yeah. And then the other piece of it is in becoming really present with the pleasure in this moment. So you don't even need to do something it's like the pleasure of the breath. the pleasure of the sky, the pleasure of the wind, the pleasure of like this, this velvet cushion feels really good. It's like, how can you delight your senses just in your home? And the more that you can build up that capacity for pleasure, the more you're going to start to magnetize that into your life. So it will start to come in all different kinds of ways. So it could also be, I'm sorry, Eri, I could talk about this for 1,000 years.
No, I love it. Like, yes, keep going.
Another thing, right, is like if you're with a partner and you're having sex or connecting in a sexual, intimate kind of way, is like slowing that down, like getting really present with the sensation in your body, like really tuning in with how do I want to be touched right now? Like what would feel pleasurable to me, instead of just getting caught up in the, the same old routine of like, this is how we do things. So there's a gazillion things in what I just shared there. I feel like there's so many.
I'm like, that's like 3 different workshops right in one. Okay. And I was just thinking about the power of, I think it's so easy for almost all of us to just be lost in like, okay, I'm doing all the things. I'm like watching the show. I'm like doing my work. I'm with the kids, whatever it is, I'm like doing it. But there's a part of you that's not really there. Right? Does that make sense? It's like, and then there's this ability where if you really want to, you can decide to focus. You can decide to become really present. I loved how you just like reached over and touched your pillow, and it's like that pillow's been there the whole time, and you could make this an entire 5-minute, hour-long practice of really being present and like, I'm going to feel what this pillow feels like and really be with it. Right. And that ability, that gift is always available to us. And I just think that we don't make time for that. And we don't think to do that. But even if it was like, I'm going to spend 10 seconds being super present with myself right now. Maybe it's like giving myself a hand massage, or maybe it's just feeling my belly go in and out as I breathe. Right? It can create so much more spaciousness in your life for what is possible and help you really feel that presence. And I love that you took it straight into the bedroom. Because when I hear the word pleasure, that's exactly where my mind goes to most of the time. And pleasure's all around us, right? It could be how we slice a strawberry in the kitchen when we're making lunch for the kids, right? And watching the juices run out. But then you bring it to the bedroom, and it's that same thing. And I'm going to take that same strawberry and bring it into the bedroom. What could you do with a strawberry? And yourself, and or your beloved, or beloveds, depending on what's going on in your world. You're like, what can you do with that one strawberry? And instead of just being like all right, let's do the thing we always do, like you just mentioned, like, how can you be really present with that? And I just think that when we give ourselves permission to really be present, like you were saying, then that's where all the juiciness comes from. So,
yeah. And it's also like you gradually increase your capacity to hold pleasure, because you'll really quickly find out where your upper limit is as to how long you can be present before your mind goes off somewhere else. And then it's like that practice of bringing it back. I had about a year ago, I was having a massage. I have a lot of massages, but I was in this massage and I noticed that my mind was going in all these different places. And I'm like, oh, wait a second. What about if I really just focus on the actual massage and the masseuse's hands moving on my body, and really allow myself to fully receive this pleasure? And so I started doing that, and I really noticed where my cap was, how long I could go before my mind went off to something else. And I spent the whole massage bringing it back, bringing it back, bringing it back. So it's a lifelong practice.
Yes. And I love what you just said. It's like, you can expand your capacity for pleasure.
Yeah.
I don't know why that's really hitting me. Like, part of me knows that, right? And I've experienced that, but I don't think I've heard somebody say it quite like that, where it's landed for me. And I'm like, oh yeah, like, it is. It's not like you have pleasure, you don't have pleasure. It's you can have pleasure, and if you don't exercise this muscle, if you don't learn how to be with it, then of course it's not going to be as strong or as big And so it's like, oh, wow, I can think about times I've had pleasure in my life. And what if that was just the tip of the iceberg? Right? What if I could have so much more? You're like,
Yes.
yeah, that's what my life is about. Oh, I love it. It feels like that whole idea was really like confronting and freaking beautiful for me. I'm like, yeah, but what have I been doing this whole time? And I do pleasure practices, and and it's like, well, but there's so much more there is. And have I been being present with that? I love this. So thanks. Already this morning, I'm like, yeah, this is a great start to my day. What am I going to do to bring more pleasure in my world today?
Exactly.
Amazing. Amazing. My dear, I know you and I could talk for days. And at the same time, we're trying to keep all of these very short and sweet for people this week, because we have a lot of amazing things to digest. So I would like to ask you, do you have anything you want to share with our audience this week?
Yes. Yeah. I have a meditation that's a freebie for you.
Thank you.
Called the Rebel Queen meditation, and this is if you have that window, that cap on your pleasure, this is a great meditation. So it's for helping you bring more pleasure into your body, open up your energy centers, and feel also more of that vitality, more of that radiance through your system. So it's about a 30-minute guided meditation. So you can do it, anytime you want, even if you're super, super busy. And yeah, I'm really excited to share it with you, because it was one of my favorites to record. So yay.
Thank you so much for the cool gift. Thank you. And then how can people follow you if they want to find you?
Yeah, so you can either go to my Instagram, which is at Sophia_LE_page, or my website, sophialepage.com. On my website, you'll find links to all my socials, the self-study courses I have, how you can work with me in a one-to-one sense, and a bunch of where you can find all the podcasts that I've been on. Like, there's a bunch of things that you can find on there. So there's ways to kind of dip in from freebies all the way up to like a high ticket kind of experience. So there's all kinds of ways that we can like play together. And yeah, and I'd also love to hear from you if you watch this and you really were like, wow, this thing stood out to me. Send me a DM on Instagram. Like, I'd love to connect and hear from you. So thank you so much.
Thank you. And I'll post all of those links and everything in the group for everyone. You're welcome to everybody tuning in. If you're watching the recording later on, if you have questions, feel free to interact, make a comment, leave some feedback. If it's within the group, I'll pull Sophia back in. And if you want to DM her something privately because of whatever's coming up in your world, that's totally cool. So just go ahead and reach out to her in the way she suggested. And with all of that, my dear Sophia, thank you so much for being here today. It's such a pleasure getting to hang out with you in real life and virtually too. So looking forward to talking with you again another time. Thank you everybody for tuning in.
Bye everybody.